Welcome, and I'm so excited to start this journey with you. The most important part I want to explain to you today, before we even get started, is this one simple concept, and this is the thing that is going to make you follow through. This is the thing that's going to give you the biggest and most radical results so you can accomplish everything and go beyond what you actually wanted before this season is over. So, the one thing I want you to understand is who you are being is everything. I'm going to explain that to you. So, who you are being is everything. And I want to put a big emphasis here on this word being. Who you are being is everything. And what that means is for you to become the golfer that you really want to become, you have to be somebody else. Because if you approach this program, if you approach this in a way that you're going to be the same person, then the results you're going to get is the same results that you're always going to get. Right? So you have to see it so clearly that if you want a different golf game, you have to be a different person. Right? Just like if you want a different lifestyle, you cannot have the same lifestyle living the same life that you used to be, right? So who you're being is everything. And it's really about creating yourself in a way that you start to see yourself as who you want to be as a golfer, right? And I'll show you an example here, right? As we kind of move a little further down, right? We have your current self. I'll use this here. You have your current self. Right, and excuse me there. You have your current self and you have your created self. Right? And let's say, for example, you have your current self and you have these behaviors, you have these traits that who you are, whether you might be a 100 shooter, right? You might be a 90 shooter, 80 shooter, whatever that may be, right? Your current self, so you have a score, right? Also, your current self is, right, how much you train, how much you practice, right? If we start to look at as a 100 shooter, right, you're probably practicing, right, once per month, right? If you're a 90 shooter, maybe like, right, 2 to 3 times per month, right? And I'm making this stuff up, but you have these behaviors and traits that are already associated, right, to the person that you are, right? Let's say we take if you're currently a PGA Tour player, right? What does that mean for how you're practicing? That probably means you are doing it, right, 6 to 7 days per week, right? And then it's in seasons, right? We have our current self, depending on how much are you thinking about it, right? Are you thinking, right, only when at the course, or, right, are you thinking only when watching on TV? Right? How often are you thinking? So there's so many, traits and behaviors of your current self. Right? How do I think about, right, what's my behavior on the course? Right? So in the course, like what happens when you hit a bad shot? Right? Do you start to one, go directly into swing fix, right? 2, right, you start to ask for help, right? 3, right, these are all different things that could happen depending where you are. Do you just move on, nothing about it, right? And so you're starting to define who it is that you are in your current self, because as we move over, right, because we want to start to move over and see, right? We want to move over. Everything needs to move over, right, into your created self, because you're starting to look at who you are currently and who you need to be. Because now, to start to create yourself, let's just say you want to be a scratch golfer. And that would mean you're shooting 72. Right? You start to look at, if I wanted to be a scratch golfer, right, how often do I need to be practicing golf? Right? For a scratch golfer, maybe that's, 3 times per week. Right? That would be 3 times a week. It might be, right, 3 times a week at home. Right? You're seeing more often. Right? Well, how about thinking about it? How often is a scratch golfer thinking about it? I can tell you they're thinking about it all the time. All the time, right? When they're, right, in the office, right, swinging the club, right, practicing their putting, they'll be in the bathroom, right, thinking about how they could make it better, right, every time past a mirror, right, they're looking to check something, right, what's the behaviors on the course, right, scratch golfers, they don't think about swing fixes on the course, right, they have nothing about it, right, they, right, have strategy behind things that go wrong. They have strategy when things go right. Right? So in this little diagram here, like, who you're being is everything, because as you start to want to make massive shifts, you have to take everything that you currently have right now, and you have to look across into the created self and look at, what am I doing that doesn't belong, right? And so we start to ask, right, these questions. Let's see this here. And we start to ask these questions. This color here, right? What am I doing that doesn't belong? Right? And you start to eliminate those things. What are the things that I don't have that I need to add? And you start to add those things. And finally, 3, what are the things that I'm currently reverting back to, even though I know I'm supposed to do it? So these are the obstacles. Constantly reverting back. Right? Even though you know what to do. And again, this is not talking about like swing tips or swing drills. These are talking about behaviors, things that drive the things that you're going to do, right? It's going to be, things like, excuse me, it's going to be things like, right, you telling yourself you're going to go do something 2 times this week, and then something gets in the way, and then you cancel it and don't do anything, right? Those are obstacles that get in the way. Like you say, I'm going to go practice twice this week, right? And then life gets in the way, other things get in the way, and then you just don't do anything. And then the same thing happens the following week, and all of a sudden you go 2 weeks without doing anything, right? When you look at who you want to be, does the scratch golfer, does a tour player, does right? The 80 shooter, does that happen? Right? We know life gets in the way, or when things get in the way, do I just move things around? Right? Do I change things where, I said I was going to go hit balls twice this week, or I said I was going to go play around in golf this week. Life gets in the way. This came up, but can I still golf? Can I still practice in the house for 15 minutes? Can I go putt? Can I go chip in the yard? Right? Can I go swing it outside for 15 minutes? Work on something so I'm touching my golf club, right? Can I do something and replace the thing that got taken away so we're not losing everything? So we're still improving towards the place that we want to get to the creative self that we want to be in, right? So most important part is who you're being is everything, because you got to be and you have to be somebody else in order to get the different results, right? So start to understand, right? List down, like, what is your current behaviors now, right? What is the score that you're shooting? How often are you doing it? What are you thinking? How often are you thinking? What's the behaviors on the golf course? Like, list all the behaviors, the traits that of who you are right now. And then, right, you start to move over to the other column and say, like, who is it that I want to be, right? And be super specific. Like, things like, I want to be a better golfer does not fit, because we can't put a metric on what a better golfer is. So, right, this is where you be raw, you be honest, you be open with yourself, and like, there's nothing that is too much, right? So if you really want to be a tour player, if you really want to be a scratch golfer, if you really want to shoot under par, if you really want to drive the ball 350 yards, whatever that may be, right, you go ahead and write that down. Because the moment you start to see yourself specifically of who you are, like, even though you might be thinking, man, I don't know the behaviors of a scratch golfer, right? I promise you, when you start writing it down, you'll look at, okay, even if you don't know it specifically, you're definitely going to see things from that perspective that you don't see right now, right? And you start to create yourself, and you start to create the behaviors. And so when your behaviors start tying into, right, starts tying into the actions that you do, then those actions create the result that you want to get into. So go ahead and do this. Start to understand who is your current self now. Create the self that you need to be. Align the behaviors, right? This is about behavior alignment. If you can align the behaviors, meaning remove the things that don't fit, add the things that need to be added. And when they start to align, right, when you start to see things align all the way across the board like this, and you start to move the things on the right side over to the left, now all of a sudden you start becoming the person that you want to create. And this is a process that you do over and over and over, because just because you say it today doesn't mean you might go into this a week, a month, and you might say, like, man, this is not for me. All right, and that's okay, right? Because now you can switch. Now you can change in real time, and you say, okay, that's not for me. I don't want to be the scratch golfer, or I'm not committed to that. I'm not willing to do that. Then you can ask yourself, what am I willing to do? Who do I really want to be? If it's not the scratch golf, maybe I want to be 80 shooter, right? And then you move yourself into being somebody that shoots in the 80s, right? And so this is always changing. This is always this is always keeping yourself in the forefront of, like, who you want to become, because it's always changing depending where you are in your life, depending on what's going on, depending on other commitments that you have, right? It's always changing. And if you can see it and you can change it in real time, then you start to enjoy the journey more. But not just enjoy the journey, you start to move extremely fast towards the place that you want to get to.